What's up, guys? Army-Firedawg back again. Today I actually have the review time of the Audio-Technica, the ATH-A550Zs. These are one of their entry-level headphones, and they go for the more studio performers or the studio recorders. I was sent these by a good friend of mine who asked me if I would like to take part in reviewing some headphones. Absolutely, I said yes, and as always I like to start with the construction. Now, the construction of it, there's quite a few pointers I want to hit on. I'm going to short and sweet, but there's a lot to this headphone, even for it to only be 120 bucks. As you can see, the first most immediate thing I've seen is the wing support system, which is these right here. This provides wonderful clamping force, but I'll get onto that in the comfort section. But this is a form of support where it's meant to give good clamping force on your head and not let it fall too much. The primary form of support, as far as like weight bearing, is these here. These are the headband or banza, because there's two of them, I guess, technically. Now, these are actually spring loaded. There's a spring right here on each one, here and here. That the concept is very sound. It has enough give to be able to form to anyone's head, but yet stay firm enough to where it supports the headphone's weight. But in practice, these fall completely, they don't do jack squat. They might as well not even be here. When they're on your head, they stay on, sure, they form my head, but I can move them up like that. There's no difference in weight at all. So the spring is not as strong as it needs to be. So it's more or less for appearance, but I think if they would improve that a little bit, it would keep the ear cups from being the primary form of support. These rest on your ear. That's what holds them up, is the ear cups themselves. Which actually brings me to my next form of the construction, which is actually a huge upside. I didn't realize this until a couple days after my review. Is, as you can see here, they go round and then they angle up a little bit. That is to angle the headphones this way towards your head. That angles the already angled drivers. If you can see it here, there they are. Actually, you can see it in the camera. See, they're actually even pointed this way. Here we are. Imagine this is the speaker, so they pointed this way towards my ear. That really improves the soundstage performance. It makes it sound more realistic, and it makes things more easier to discern of being in front of you versus usually behind you, or rather in your head. This is actually very rare. I've actually personally have never seen this on a headphone of this tier. That's usually reserved for the higher tier, higher priced headphones, that little feature. So a huge upside to Audio-Technica for including that in this. That is awesome. And also the drivers themselves are 53 millimeters, so they are huge. Those are monsters. The construction of the actual headphone itself is not premiumly made. It is plastic on the cheaper variety. So I would recommend being somewhat careful with these. Like after you're done listening to them, I would advise against throwing them down like on the couch or something. I would recommend setting them down. Also with these, I would recommend pinching this or putting too much weight on these. These are quite firm, as in they'll probably snap if you bend them too much, but I mean they can handle like getting adjusted. They can handle that. The cord moving down, I was very impressed with the cord. I don't think we're gonna have too much issues with the cable, other than the fact that, just like I did in my unboxing video, this thing is so daggum long. The entire time I kept it bound up right here, and it still snagged on everything. Further, I was walking with these and listened to them in the car. Didn't matter. They were always getting snagged on something. But that's just the feature of a long cable. I understand it's for the studio performers who usually are away from their equipment, like they have to walk, like kind of adjust their large soundboard. But for the average listener, give us a removable cable or a shorter cable with an extension. Give us something. And then at the end of that, it is terminated by a 3.5 millimeter, but you do get this 6.5 or 1/4 inch stereo jack. So you can plug this into a mobile device or to your amplifier. But actually, it's about the construction. Now, moving down to the comfort. Now, as awkward and as wacky as the link system support looks, like, I mean, this is rather goofy. I mean, it looks kind of silly. But not once of all the headphones I have ever tried that use this system has been anything remotely uncomfortable. They provide the perfect amount of clamping force. Like, they might as well be getting a nice hug when you have these on your head. They are just spot on. Absolutely no complaints. The headband, the mesh here, is very nice. Like this, the give on them is great. I mean, it feels right here. Never once does it brush against my head. Does it feel irritating at all? Wonderful. The ear cups have a wonderful amount of give. They are very, very soft. They're not premiumly made. Like, this is definitely the standard ear pad covering and foam mesh. Actually, it might be a little bit better than the cheapest variety, but still rather inexpensive to make. However, the ear pads, they don't breathe that much. After about 30-45 minutes, my ears did start to get a bit warm. Despite that, I still wore these for hours on end. Easily hours on end. Despite the headband failing and pretty much, or actually no, not pretty much, all the weight is resting on your ears, the way it distributes its weight, no complaints. Very, very, very nice. Very well done, Audio-Technica. Now, let's move down to the most important aspect, and that is the sound quality. So how do these sound? The first thing you're going to notice is when you start listening to them is they are spot neutral. Like, they are a very, very neutral and balanced sound just about throughout the entirety of it. Soundstage is very round. It's a very circular soundstage. Nothing's too weird about it. Although the soundstage is very round, it's not vast. I've heard broader soundstage even in this price point. But what it makes up for in the overall size of it is the separation. The separation of the instruments, the vocals from the instruments. Awesome. Like, I would say, in terms of being the detail reproduction and the soundstage and positioning, these are the best headphones I've personally ever heard. Not just in the sub $150, but I wouldn't go as far as a sub $200 price point. MSRP, not what you can get them for sale used. But brand new MSRP, sub $200, right here. This is currently the best I've heard in terms of sonic accuracy, detail reproduction, and soundstage positioning. Imaging, on the other hand, is not the best. I can always tell when I have them on my head that I was listening to headphones. I never drifted away. I never closed my eyes and was able to imagine the performance. No, I could tell I always had headphones on my head. So imaging was meh. Jumping into the individual aspects. So maybe I can describe the sound a little bit better too. And spoiler, you're going to hear the word neutral and balanced quite a bit because it's a pretty good summary of the headphones. But starting with the treble, the highs were wonderful. They showed beautiful extension. They shot well up there, and it wasn't a sharp peak either. It was a nice, gradual, soft. There was no harshness to these, but they do extend. While listening to some of my favorite songs, Max Sense, Siren, Where's My Mind, Diva Dance by Evgenia Luguna. I had to actually search that name, and if I didn't say it right, apologies. At least I actually was able to find the name this time versus saying the Diva Dance song from Fifth Element. Anywho, both of those songs go way up there. They can have some really high moments. And the Audio-Technica, the ATH-A550Zs, they're going to hit that. So you're going to get some high notes. And it's not harsh, but it ain't gonna subdue you at all. The ability for these to also reproduce the energy transfer. Like, when I'm listening to those songs, you just get chills. Or one of my favorite artists, Lindsey Sterling, as y'all know her violin is very energetic. Almost every one of her songs are wonderfully played, filled with energy, filled with life. And these portray that very, very well. You get chills when she screeches that high note. It's just wonderful. I do not have a complaint with the treble in any form, fashion, or function. Now, moving down to the mids. And you guys know my mids are where I like to be. I love mids. That's where the vocals lie. That's where the soul, the heart of the artist, the emotion is. The Audio-Technica, the ATH-A550Zs, were, again, very, very neutral. They were very sonically accurate, as in I believe what I was hearing was the artist's voice, as close to it as it reasonably for these could get. It had a real flesh and bone sound to it, listening to Trace Atkins' Muddy Water, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou from the Soggy Bottom Boys. You could really tell you're listening to those artists beautifully well. Except for the one, one of the only complaints I have about, it is the only complaint I have about the sound quality on these, and it's on the lower mids and the upper bass line. Somewhere in this, these do distort, notably and consistently. A great example that I found that did this very, very consistently was Believe by Brooks and Dunn. It was the song I was listening to, and I couldn't hardly listen to it because it consistently did it. And I'm like, dear gosh, this is a beautiful song, but not on the ATH-A550Zs. That distortion just it sounded kind of grainy. It sounded like a very badly compressed MP3. And I'm sure you guys know how that sounds and the difference it makes from going from that to FLAC or lossless, whatever you so choose to use. Other than that little small mishap, the mids are wonderful. Wonderful. I don't have any of these complaints while listening to a female artist, because very rarely does her notes get down that low, quite obviously. But now moving down towards the bass. The bass is the heartbeat of the music. It's what keeps the rhythm, the pace, the count, gives people the physical feels of the music. On the 550Zs, these had a surprising amount of punch to them in terms of sub bass. But even in the upper bass line with the distortion, that to the mid bass was very neutral. It was a very consistent transition. There was no waviness that I could tell until you get to the sub bass area, and then it peaked up a good bit. It had a nice bit of forward sub bass, like you could feel the music. Very impressive, like you felt the music you're listening to. I'm not a bass head, as you guys should hopefully well know if you've been watching me. So I have very few bass songs. Actually, offhand, I don't know of any bassy songs. So I do YouTube. Yes, it's not the best in the world, but it works. It does its purpose. And the song I find that I use quite a bit is Argatu by Divicia. It's just a sub bass test song, and that's what it does. It tests the headphone sub bass, whether it can produce it, how well, so on and so forth. And these, I was expecting, before I listened to that song, a normal, consistent has it, but not so much. No, these got some thump to them. Quite impressively. But getting back on track, the bass is very controlled. It's very tight, and it plays really well with like EDM and techno music. It can keep up with it, though I don't think it's really geared towards that. But it can keep up with it very, very well. But in conclusion, guys, to sum up my thoughts and opinions on the Audio-Technica ATH-A550Zs, construction, they can use some improvements. They need to improve the headbands, either make a shorter cable, detachable cable, or do a shorter cable with an extension. It was so irritating. I understood the reason. I just hate overly unnecessarily long cables without at least the option to have a detachable cable so I can attach a shorter one. The the comfort, spot on, no complaints. Sure, you could fix the headband. They're awesome. This wing system, awesome. Audio-Technica, keep doing it. You've got it right. You've got it nailed. Quality wise, amazingly neutral, incredibly sonically accurate. As in, what you're hearing is pretty spot on with what you're going to hear in a live performance, which is why these are studio monitors. This is what you're going to hear in the studio. What people are going to master the songs you're listening to with are probably going to be these, and rightfully so. There's a small hiccup in the lower mids, upper bass range with a little bit of distortion, but not so much as to derail. If you're not truly listening for a flaw, you're probably not going to hear it. Being humble and modest, even myself, unless I'm in like review mode, I very rarely heard distortion other than songs that it spotlighted it. All in all, these headphones are so close to being just perfect. You just gotta change just a couple things, and they would be one of the few headphones I was able to rate a 5. If you guys are looking for a relatively inexpensive, sonically accurate, balanced, neutral headphone, you're going to absolutely fall in love with the A550Zs. But these are spot on awesome. But if you have any questions, or if there's anything I may have missed, or if you want me to review anything else that you have in mind, hit me up in the comments, guys. But as always, my name's Army-Firedawg. Please, I ask, guys, stay safe.